Hello, my name is Rob Parker, and I am the director of Launch. This past January, Terry Smith had reached out to me to talk about a dilemma that we have in our denomination. And that dilemma is discipleship. When you look at all the data from our CNMA churches here in the United States, we see that there is a discipleship dilemma. This was both pre-COVID, but it's even highlighted now post-COVID. Yes, we can have a lot of excuses to having to re-engage people to our churches, to why the discipleship structures in our churches are fractured. You see, Terry had reached out to me because he knows that I oversee Launch. Launch was something that we established about 9 years ago, but over the last 6 years, it's really taken a whole new step in empowering churches in the Northeast to make disciples. I've worked on both teams in our region for church planting and currently in the Metro District as being one of the church plant strategists. It's in these roles that I've been the one who's been overseeing helping reestablish discipleship amongst both planters and established churches. And so as Terry saw this dilemma, that it was just growing and becoming more evident that it needed to be addressed, he reached out to me and said, "Are you still doing Launch?" And with a big grin on my face, I said, "We are still doing Launch." You see, here's what Launch is. This is what we do. We have 4 movements in Launch. We have engaging, establishing, equipping, and empowering. We at Launch, we want to engage our church leaders that we work with initially with the gospel of Jesus Christ. We love CNMA theology, and that we know that everything we do comes forth from our understanding of the gospel, the fourfold gospel. And right away, we want to engage our leaders with the gospel of Jesus Christ for themselves so they can engage their leaders and their congregation. Next, we want to establish a discipleship culture. What do I mean by this? First, for our planters, as a planter, you need to establish a discipleship culture amongst your church planting team and then amongst your church planting body. But what about for those established churches? Because they already have established a discipleship culture. The problem is they need to re-establish a discipleship culture because there are fractures in their current structure that they already have. So at Launch, we want to establish for planters and re-establish a discipleship culture amongst the leaders and their teams. Third, what we want to do is we want to equip our leaders. We want to equip our leaders how to make disciples and how to contextualize the ministry to where God has planted them to minister. What do I mean by this? The truth of the matter is, suburbs in New Jersey are very different than suburbs in the state of Washington. Just like cities on the West Coast are very different than cities on the East Coast. And what about the rural areas? Rural areas of New York are very different than that of the Midwest. And so we want to help you understand how to contextualize and equip your leaders to make disciples. And lastly, we want to empower. We want to empower multiplication. Empower multiplication. That looks different for every different church, whether that be empower the multiplication of groups, multiplication of plants or campuses, or what about empowering the multiplication of IWs? Yes, at Launch, we have worked with IWs in our denomination. Even during the pandemic, they would stream and Zoom with us as we equipped them to be able to make disciples, to establish a discipleship culture on their mission field. And so, again, we engage, we establish, we equip, and we empower. So what makes Launch unique? Because there's so many different discipleship ministries out there. First and foremost, we center everything on Christian and Missionary Alliance theology. Yes, CNMA theology is our foundation. But then we have a philosophy of ministry that we learn from A.B. Simpson of how to really contextualize ministry. Second, our coaching is foundational. we want to pair planters with planters and established churches with established churches. We want to work with those in similar contexts so they can learn from one another. As they are being equipped by their coaches, they are also learning amongst one another. And as they are being coached, they're going back to coach their teams. Also, we want to have attainable measurables. Every church is uniquely different. Not everyone's going to go plant multiple campuses. Not everyone's going to send out church planters. For some, they just want to establish new groups. We've seen this. We saw this past year. We worked with a church that had 0 groups. And within 5 months, they established 9 different discipleship groups. And they started this fall with 13 discipleship groups. People are being plugged in and both being discipled and making disciples. And lastly, it's all about contextualization. Again, every place is unique. And it's our hope that we would embrace the place that God has called us to minister in. And so, contextualization is one of those things that the reality is one size does not fit all. And I really believe, again, that's what makes Launch unique. We do not expect you to do the same ministry as someone else. We want to help you establish, to dream, and to implement that which God has birthed in your church's vision to come to fruition. So, again, I want to thank Terry for allowing me to present. And at the same time, I want to invite you, whether you have churches in your district or you want to see Launch be part of your district, to feel free and reach out to us. Email us, and we will get in touch with you. And 2 things can happen. First, you can send your church planters or your pastors to us and participate in Launch, whether in Western PA or in the metro area, or we can actually bring Launch to you. That's been the beauty of Launch. You see, we're inviting people to multiply disciples, and we at the same time have been multiplying Launch. Yes, we have 2 Launch teams, one in metro and one in Western PA. And we would love to see Launch multiply to you as well. And so, if there's any way that you want to use Launch to further the discipleship movement within your districts, reach out to us and we will help you establish and reestablish a discipleship structure within your church's context. The story of the Christian and Missionary Alliance began with one man who was so overwhelmed by the gospel of Jesus Christ that he could not contain it only for himself. As A.B. Simpson read the scriptures, he realized that so many churches, especially the church he was pastoring, was missing the key ingredient: going. Everything that the CNMA has become was built on that command: go and make disciples.
Launch isn't about some new way of doing evangelism. In fact, it's about doing discipleship, making disciples, because that's what Jesus told us to do, the way that Jesus did it. The gospel spreads most rapidly and most effectively across already existing lines of social communication. People come to know Jesus because other people that they know and trust have had their lives changed by Jesus.
So how did one man see so much gospel movement? First, he gathered a small group of 7 people. Just like Jesus commanded, they went out, welcomed people into their lives, shared meals with them, and invited every and anyone to put their faith in Jesus Christ.
One of the stories we heard at Launch a few years ago was that someone else who had a group of people meeting together moved his backyard barbecue to the front yard, and in doing so got to meet many more of his neighbors. So we did that 2 summers ago, and now we know everybody's name on the block. A lot of our children will play together at the park, and we'll just have conversation, and all kind of started with that backyard barbecue moving to the front yard and just meeting people, greeting people with a burger or a hot dog, and then from there seeing what kind of fruit would blossom from that.
When people came to faith, they taught them to know Christ and make Him known. People were so overwhelmed by the power of the gospel and the love they received from God's people, they were launched into their neighborhoods, places of work, and the entire world with the love, truth, and compassion of Jesus Christ. A.B. Simpson launched a gospel movement that was founded on making disciples.
What Launch really did for us was they were able to help us look at the community through the context from the inside out and really see what it was like. And they gave us the tools and framework that we needed to go and develop a plan in order to reach that community, and it's been really helpful for us.
It is our desire to get back to the basics of making disciples. We are not talking about a program, but a discipleship process. It is a process that meets the needs of the heart of each leader, a process that teaches you to know the gospel and speak the gospel fluently, a process that equips you to know your neighbor and community context, and a process where multiplication is not the goal, but the natural flow as you embrace the call of Christ.
God used Launch to affirm my purpose and calling in my everyday friendships.
Launch is our vehicle to equip you and your people to get back to the original command of Christ.
The coaching I received through Launch sharpened what I was already doing intuitively and then helped me gain traction by expanding it to others that I wanted to bring alongside of me.
Launch is the starting point where you and your team get to reimagine the power of the gospel. Launch is the beginning of seeing your community transformed